Humanity really is not evolved to think of existential threats in general. We're evolved to think about things that are very close to us, near term, to be upset with other humans, and not to really to think about things that could destroy humanity as a whole. But then in recent decades, just really in the last century, we had nuclear bombs, which could potentially destroy civilization, obviously. We have AI, which could destroy civilization. We have global warming, which could destroy civilization, or at least severely disrupt civilization. You know, it would be something in the same way that humans destroyed the habitat of primates. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be destroyed, but we might be relegated to a small corner of the world. When Homo sapiens became much smarter than other primates, it pushed all the other ones into small habitats. They're just in the way. You could make a swarm of assassin drones for very little money by just taking the Face ID chip that's used in cell phones and having a small explosive charge and a standard drone, and have them just do a grid sweep of the building until they find the person they're looking for, ram into them and explode. You can do that right now. No new technology is needed. Right now. Probably a bigger risk than being hunted down by a drone is that AI would be used to make incredibly effective propaganda. That would not seem like propaganda.
So these are deep fakes.
Yeah, influence the direction of society, influence elections. Artificial intelligence just hones the message, looks at the feedback, makes this message slightly better. Within milliseconds, it can adapt its message and shift and react to news. And there's so many social media accounts out there that are not people. Like, how do you know it's a person, not a person? The way in which a regulation is put in place is slow and linear,
right?
And we are facing an exponential threat. And if you have a linear response to an exponential threat, it's quite likely the exponential threat will win. That, in a nutshell, is the issue. Yeah. Electrode to neuron interface at a micro level, a chip and a bunch of tiny wires. The long-term aspiration for Neuralink would be to achieve a symbiosis with artificial intelligence, and to achieve a sort of democratization of intelligence, such that it is not monopolistically held in a purely digital form by governments and large corporations. Essentially, how do we ensure that the future constitutes the sum of the will of humanity? And so if we have billions of people with a high bandwidth link to the AI extension of themselves, it would actually make everyone hyper smart. It's probably on the order of a decade. And by the way, you kind of have this already in a weird way, in that you have a digital tertiary layer in the form of your phone, your computers. You basically have these computing devices that form a tertiary layer on your cognition already. Along the way, Neuralink is going to help solve a lot of nerve problems. In fact, we're just talking about, okay, what would it take to really solve for spinal cord injuries? We already know how to do this. Implant electrodes into the motor cortex of the brain, and then bypass the severed section of the spine and have effectively local microcontrollers near the muscle groups. It could restore full limb functionality. Very exciting what can be done here. And it's just memory. Like, as people get older, they lose their memory. And it's incredibly sad when a mother forgets her children, and that can be solved too. I think we should try to take the set of actions that are most likely to make the future good for humanity. I'm pro-human. And my faith in humanity has been a little shaken this year, but I'm still pro-humanity. Well, I mean, Tesla really faced a severe threat of death due to the Model 3 production ramp. Essentially, the company was bleeding money like crazy, and just if we didn't solve these problems in a very short period of time, we would die. And it was extremely difficult to solve them.
How close to death did you come?
Within single-digit weeks.
22 hours a day, or like what? How many hours?
Just working, so 7 days a week, sleeping in the factory. I worked in the paint shop, general assembly, body shop. No one should put this many hours into work. This is not good. People should not work this hard. They should not do this. It's very painful.
Painful in what sense?
It hurts my brain and my heart. It hurts. This is not recommended for anyone. I just did it because if I didn't do it, then good chance Tesla would die.
Do you believe in God?
I believe there's some explanation for this universe, which you might call God.
So my concern with the CO2 is not kind of where we are today, or even the current rate of carbon generation, but really if carbon generation keeps accelerating and we keep getting that increase in the Keeling curve, the CO2 parts per million in the atmosphere, and if we keep going and if we're complacent, then I think we could. There's some risk of sort of non-linear climate change. So thus far we've seen the CO2 parts per million be fairly linear on our time scale, although it looks very exponential on geologic time scale. But there are certain potential nonlinear events, like if we raise the temperature to the point where we melt the Siberian traps or something like that.
And methane escapes, yeah.
Yeah, there's just a massive amount of sort of frozen dead plant animal matter in Siberia. There's potentially trapped gases deep in the ocean. If the ocean warms, that could be released. So, these are just risks that are not wise to take. And since we know that long term we're going to have renewable energy anyway, because we'll run out of oil and gas. It's not going to last forever. So we know where this ends up. This has to end up with renewable, sustainable energy. It's tautological. It's really just a question of, do we try to get there sooner or later? And we should try to get there sooner. It's obvious. Why run the? How long do you want to run this experiment? As I said, I am. People sometimes think I'm sort of like. I'm kind of in the middle of the spectrum. I think if we stop CO2 production today, which obviously we could not do without civilization coming to a grinding halt, and mass starvation and all sorts of terrible things happening. So we could not stop CO2 generation today. But I think at the sort of 400, possibly even 500 ppm level, I think it's probably okay. But if as the world industrializes and we're sort of at 8 billion people, get to 9 billion people, have a lot more industrial output per person, you can see at what might be okay at sort of 400 or 500 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere might become quite dire at 1,000.
Yep.
And the trend is certainly in that direction if we don't do anything about it. So that's why I think it's just probably an unwise experiment to run. Even if you think that this is why I think it should be a compelling argument to even those who would assign a low probability to increased CO2 causing problems. Like, let's say you think it's 99.9% likely that adding all the CO2 to the ocean's atmosphere is going to be fine. So you're saying there's a 0.1% chance of disaster. Well, there's only one. So right now we're going to get one planet. Well, even a 0.1% chance of disaster, why run that risk? That's crazy. So I think what's likely to play out is that we will continue to add a lot more CO2 to the ocean's atmosphere, and also ocean acidification, as you know, is also an issue. You don't want to sort of add carbonic acid to the oceans and change the pH level, because it destroys reefs, and it's hard to complain. The outcome so far has been great. Although obviously, we've not yet sent anyone to Mars, and hopefully we'll in the future. And in fact, just a few days ago, or late last week, I guess, NASA. So a SpaceX craft will be the next craft to put humans on the moon. I believe the first human will be a woman actually this time.
Yes.
So this is great.
Yeah.
But of course we have to actually do it. And And then tomorrow we've got our third astronaut launch.